The last part of multiplication is an application, which is the area of a shape, of a geometric shape. And so I like to think of this in terms of, for instance, flooring. If you were trying to figure out how much flooring you needed for a chunk of your floor, let's say your kitchen, you're going to be talking about the two-dimensional measurement known as area. So if you're looking at a rectangle, area is the length times the width, and these are in your formula sheet. If you were looking at the area of a square, well, a square is just a type of rectangle, so the area is still length times width. But in this case, if we called the length of each side S, we know since it's a square that those sides are going to be equal. So we could replace the L with an S because our length is now S. We could replace the width with an S. And so we end up with area equals the side squared. So you can think of these as length times width, or if you have a square, you can do that shortcut and think of it as the length of the square squared. Okay, so let's say we have a desktop which has dimensions of 50 inches by 25 inches, and we want to know the area of its surface. So as soon as you see that word area in the word problem, you can think multiplication. We're going to assume this is rectangular. I guess there's only two dimensions, so it must, well, we'll say rectangular. Okay, so if we're trying to figure out area, then we know area is length times width. Our length here is 50 inches and our width is 25 inches. So if we do that multiplication, now remember multiplication is commutative, so I can do 50 times 25 or I can do 25 times 50. They mean the same thing. I like to put the 50 down below because since it starts with a 0, I just end up with a 0 there. So I've got a 0 in my first column. Then I can start worrying about my tens. Okay, so I'm going to start worrying about my tens. So I've got 5 times 5 gives me 25, carry the 2. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12. So I end up with an answer then of 1,250. The units for area will always be squared because we just multiplied inches times inches, which would give us inches squared. So we would write this as inches squared. Okay, so let's just make a note of that. Note units for area are squared. And these are important details to make note of because you want to write the correct units in your measurement. That's very important. Another application you might see is volume. So volume is sort of the amount of air something would occupy, or the three-dimensional amount of space something holds. So if we have a rectangular prism like you see here, imagine you've got a cardboard box or something like that. The volume of that cardboard box is going to be the length multiplied by the width, so area like we just did, but then multiplied by the height. So if we have a room that's 15 feet long, 10 feet wide, and 8 feet high, and we want to know its volume, well, I'm going to start by writing that formula again. So volume is length times width times height. It told me my length was 15 feet. My width was 10 feet. And my height was 8 feet. So I could do this by hand by multiplying those first two numbers and then multiplying the answer by that third number, or go ahead and use your calculator. So you'll do 15 times 10 times 8, and you'll get an answer of 1,200. And then what are our units going to be here? Well, this time we have feet times feet times feet. So our units here are going to be feet cubed. So anytime you're dealing with volume, your measurement would be cubed for units. So note units for volume are cubed.